Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Dynasty Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined as always by Pat Fitzmaurice and by Scott Bogman. Fellas, we're recording a day early because our usual recording day is Thursday, which is tomorrow, which is the 4th of July. Fitz, are you doing anything for the holiday?
We are going out to dinner with some friends and having them back to our place because you can see our municipal fireworks from our front yard, which is nice. We don't have to go to the park and lay out a blanket, and I don't think you can take any alcohol into the park, but that won't be a problem at our house. Alcohol readily at hand, along with bathrooms, which is always really nice too. So,
of course. Bogman, what about you?
Steaks, brews, and watching the fireworks over the lake, man. It's a huge holiday in Texas. We're going to enjoy it, and I'm going to be able to see fireworks from my house until the end of July. So,
are you required by Texas state law to blow things up, Bogman?
At least one thing. Every Texas resident has to blow up one thing. I'm hoping that I don't JPP, and I keep everything going on here. So, fingers that I have right now crossed. So.
I adopted a dog last summer in July, but after the 4th. So this will be my first 4th of July with the dog. We have gotten, over the weekend, some early fireworks, people starting around in the neighborhood, and he's been pretty good with it. I've been really pleasantly surprised. He kind of looks up and is like, okay, that's an abnormal noise. But he's not freaking out. He's not one of those dogs that runs around. So I always feel really bad for, any family with a dog. Who has to go through that during the 4th of July. It seems like I might have gotten lucky with my little guy. We'll find out for sure.
Don't count those chickens yet. We'll see. Hopefully.
We'll find out for sure.
Keep those fingers you have crossed too.
Yes, well, I still have my fingers. We never did a whole big thing as a family growing up, but we always had the neighborhood over and did the little set up 2 ladders and a plank of wood and just kind of the smaller little fireworks, and we would sit in the driveway and enjoy it. So that was always fun. It was smaller, but people would make ice cream. And
I grew up in Texas and Arizona, so we had them in the driveway, in the parking lot, places where they shouldn't have been for sure. So I've seen enough fireworks to last a lifetime. I could say that.
Hopefully, when we are here recording next week's episode, we will all have our fingers still firmly attached to our hands.
No problem.
Everybody, let us know in the comments what your favorite 4th of July annual tradition is. Let's jump into this week's show. We are talking about Bogman's favorite Dynasty startup picks in every round. We'll, of course, do a Fitz version of this next week. For this week's episode, it's just easier to split it up between 2 different episodes. We are running through all of Bogman's favorites, and then Fitz and I will, of course, react and give our opinions on the players that Bogman picks. Just a quick reminder for everybody, all of our 2024 consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. You can also navigate to our staff Dynasty rankings on the site as well. We're going to go through 20 rounds because startup drafts, obviously a little bit longer than your standard redraft league. And we'll sort of have Bogman, I'll let him kind of explain what his approach to this was. It wasn't as simple as kind of picking a couple of names here and there. He went through and did some, kind of, as I think you called it, an eyeball draft on your own, kind of picking early, picking middle, picking late, kind of seeing who really stuck out to you in the picks that you were most happy with at the end of your kind of self drafts there. So why don't you kick us off with round 1? Who were your favorite players that you drafted in round 1?
Yeah, I did the eyeball draft. I drafted 5 eyeball teams or whatever. It was based on an early pick, a mid pick, a late pick. I did a less restrictive one and then one off of my rankings. And then I, took them all, put them in a sheet, looked to see who was in round 1, who did I take in round 2, all that all the way through. I came up with way more names than I was asked, of course, because I'm a psychopath like most of us are. But it really pointed out to me some of the names. Obviously, some of them are going to be the same ones you've heard that I like. But it pointed out some spots where I was like, okay, this is where this guy is going currently, obviously. I didn't know that I liked him more than these players. And sometimes I would get to around in those restrictive ones and kind of feel a little queasy about a pick. I got to pick out of one of these guys. I guess I'll take X, Y, or Z. You know what I mean? So, but in the first round, my picks, I only had 3 picks in 5 of these eyeball drafts.
Let me interrupt you quickly just
Please.
to know for everybody so they're not surprised. This is a single QB format.
Yes.
Next week's episode with Fitz, we're going to have him do from the Superflex perspective. But just so you can hear these names, you don't go, oh, really? It should be all quarterbacks round 1. This is from a single QB format.
Yeah, single QB. So in the first round, I only had 3 picks in my 5 drafts. They were CeeDee Lamb, Bijan, and Jahmyr Gibbs. And I love Bijan, right? But if I'm picking one of these picks, I think it has to be CeeDee Lamb. I think your approach in a 1QB should be to get a wide receiver because they last so much longer. Whoever you want between Chase, Jefferson, and Lamb is. I think you're splitting hairs at that point. They're all very, very good. They're all in high passing offenses with decent quarterbacks. So I think these are the guys to pick from if you do get to choose your pick. I'm going after a high pick to get one of those high wide receivers.
I was interested because I would think that most people would agree with you that you would want to lean towards the receiver. So it was interesting to me that there was only one receiver here that you listed. Like you said, it could be kind of pick your poison, but pick your favorite of those kind of elite guys. But two of those names that you mentioned were running backs, and I totally get the argument for Bijan. But to me in my head, if I'm starting off unless it's Bijan, like a guy that I truly believe is generational, I'm so much more likely to take a receiver. Fitz, what was your takeaway from this group of names?
Let me just start with a question, Boggs. What about Breece Hall vis-a-vis Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs? Since Hall usually goes sort of in between those guys, I don't know. I don't want to say that. I guess, do you prefer both of those guys at cost to Breece Hall?
No, I prefer Bijan to Breece Hall. Jahmyr Gibbs I only picked one. He was my late pick because the way the grouping worked when I was being kind of restrictive, it was Gibbs, Puka, AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson. I kind of wanted to do a running back build because my first one I had picked CeeDee Lamb. So I wanted to see what it looked like with Gibbs. I don't know if that's something that I would do again. I'd probably take Garrett Wilson over him if we're thinking about, obviously long-term and stuff. But between Gibbs and Hall, I am on Hall. I just have him one spot below Bijan. So in the other spots, I had Bijan ahead, so I would take Bijan.
You're a big Bijan guy. How big do you see the gap being between Bijan and
I am literally
Hall
right next to each other. It's not
okay.
far at all. They're right next to each other. I would say that these are the top two running backs for the future right now, obviously. So those are the guys I'd want to pick from. I took Gibbs to see how it looked on the back end. Like I said, not my favorite. I'd probably go with Garrett Wilson next time.
Obviously, Fitz, no one is complaining if they're getting any of the elite receivers, but of kind of that big three, how would you rank them?
I believe I've got Chase number one, Chase, Jefferson, Lamb.
Okay.
But I mean, it is really splitting hairs for me. I think there's very minimal gapping between those three.
Y'all know how much I love Lamb because I'm a Texas guy promoting the Oklahoma guy. So, and I said him over over Bijan. So,
if you're in a league, most dynasty leagues would allow this where you can trade during the startup draft. If you're in a spot where somebody really wants one of those three, try and trade down, pick up a mid-round pick or something and say,
sure,
you'll be happy to take one of those three and let somebody else come up and get their favorite of the three because you're happy with any of them, or at least should be. Let's go to round two here. What'd you do here, Boggs?
Round two, I went mainly wide receivers. This is more wide receivers than running backs. It was Chris Olave, who I took twice, ETN, Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Waddle. And Olave ended up being my guy, which it didn't really surprise me because Olave is a great wide receiver. I am high on him. But I thought maybe I would be more in on Tyreek, but Tyreek is old for a startup. Maybe every once in a while you can do it in a specific type of build. But for the most part, I'm going to want the young guy. Olave is the young guy out of this group. So I like Waddle too, but Olave was my favorite pick here.
Yeah, there is no chance I'm drafting Tyreek in the second round of a startup. And I recognize that means I probably just won't get him.
Sure.
But I just you can get players who will help you win now who are also a lot younger when you're picking that early. So just where you have to take him at that age and how much he relies on his elite athleticism, it's just not for me. It's a justifiable pick, I think, but it's not for me. What do you think, Fitz?
Yeah, so I agree with you on Hill. I wouldn't go for him unless if you're determined to win right away, maybe he becomes more appealing. But boy, in a startup, I'm going for one of these younger guys. And I like Bogman's choices of Olave and Waddle here among the receivers. I mean, Waddle just part of it, I guess, is that he is obscured somewhat by Tyreek Hill, but he is just so good, man. And he's not going to be in Hill's shadow forever. And even in that shadow, he's still putting up 1,000-yard seasons. Like, he's a fantastic player. And I still feel like there's meat on the bone with Olave. Like, we have not seen that guy's best season yet. He and Carr were kind of out of sync last year. Maybe it had something to do with Carr's shoulder issues. But man, I think we could see a 1,500-yard season from Olave at some point.
Yeah, I really like Olave. I think because of the struggles of the Saints offense as a whole, that he might be flying a little bit under the radar in startups. I think he's somebody that, dynasty managers in existing leagues like have been aware of and been thinking about, trading for as like a, trade target opportunity. But in startups, I feel like I just don't see people being as excited or aggressive about him. The talent is like very much still there. And like you said, like the best is ahead. I certainly believe in that with Olave as well. So I really like that pickup. Let's go to round number 3. Who you got here, Boggs?
Round 3 was one of the few where I did take 5 different players in my 5 drafts. And that's not, it's not typical for my rounds. I think I had 5 rounds like that. And maybe 2 or 3 of those, I took guys in like different rounds. Maybe I got a guy a little bit lower than I had before, but this one was the first round that I think became conditional based on what I had already drafted. So the guys that I had here, I had Walker and Achane at running back, and then Odunze, DJ Moore, and Nico Collins at wide receiver. But I think we all know, and I don't know if Fitz would agree with me because the position is not great. Maybe if it's the first running back you take instead of your second running back, but Kenneth Walker was my guy here because I cannot get over how good this guy is. I think they're going to use him more in Seattle this year because the quarterback position is weak. Seattle likes Sam Howell. I would say I'm a little higher on Sam Howell because the Seahawks like him, but I mean, Fitz doesn't like him at all. So if Geno is the old man, Sam Howell's your backup plan, you might be running the ball a ton in the future. So I think Kenneth Walker's in a really good spot here.
Fitz, I know I've talked a lot this offseason about the other running back too. Devon Achane is somebody you're very high on.
Yeah, for sure. And, people are maybe a little skittish because they don't know what the workload is going to be, but I think it's going to be comparable to the workload Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have, and people seem very comfortable taking Jahmyr Gibbs at the top of startups. So, man, I would not hesitate. A dude who averaged, almost 8 yards a carry on 100+ carries. Yeah, he's talented. He's really good. And like, it wasn't what we saw last year wasn't a fluke. I just look forward to seeing what Achane can do over a full season, because we know he got off to kind of a slow start. He had that shoulder injury coming out of the preseason. And I don't know if we ever got the handle on what his true usage is going to be in Mike McDaniel's offense. I think we'll know a little bit better this year. And man, like if we see Raheem Mostert not stay healthy, as he typically does not, but did in 2023, Jalen Wright will pitch in for sure. But Achane with a big workload, like look out.
Obviously fits 2 Bears receivers here. I think most people would have Odunze ahead of Moore just because he's younger and has the prospect pedigree. Not that Moore didn't, but a higher level of prospect pedigree coming into the NFL, the age difference, just the excitement about the idea of him being with Caleb Williams for his whole career is it's very fun to imagine. Is there a case for DJ Moore to maybe be more highly valued than Odunze just because we've actually seen him do it at a high level despite poor quarterback play, and now he gets the best quarterback of his career?
Yeah, it's not like he's old. DJ Moore's in his prime, squarely in his prime. And, Worm, I'm not going to say anything bad about DJ Moore in front of you, the Maryland guy. Like, he's so good. I wouldn't worry too much about the target logjam with DJ Moore. I think he's going to get his in this offense. Like, he's just that kind of a player. He is going to command the football, even if there are other good receivers around him. But obviously, Rome is a terrific prospect, and I have no beef with him going this early in startups.
DJ Moore is basically the only Terp I can really justifiably plant my flag on, so I have to do it. Bogman, one last thing before we move off this round. You mentioned that this is kind of the first round where you're maybe thinking about the players you've already taken in rounds 1 and 2. So in those first 2 rounds, are you not, if you take a running back in round 1, you're still open to taking whatever in round 2, or vice versa with a receiver? Or do you go into a draft planning on, at least for that first 2 rounds, maybe first 3 rounds, I want to build of 2X and 1Y, or is it entirely you would take 3 running backs if that's how the board fell?
It's a great question. What I want is I want 2 wide receivers and a running back. Whatever order that is, it is. So if that's Lamb, Olave, Walker, I'm all good. If that's Bijan, Olave, Odunze, I'm okay with that as well. So that is the plan that I want. I don't necessarily hold to it every time. You're not going to be in a position to hold to it every time, but that is the dream scenario for me.
But before we move on to round 4, can I make
Please.
one more quick comment? I can't believe Nico Collins' Dynasty ADP is like roughly the same or maybe even lower than it is in redraft. I don't get that. I mean, like, I love Nico's long-term outlook, but I don't love his short-term outlook with the target logjam. I mean, it's probably going to take some sort of injury for, Nico had this great season of efficiency last year, much like Brandon Ayuk, where he did a lot with not that many targets. I forget what he had, like 108 or 107 targets. And it's hard to see him expanding his target count this year. But man, down the road, like, I think he could be the alpha at some point. But just, Stephon Diggs obviously complicates things for him this season. I'm just surprised he's not valued higher in Dynasty than in redraft.
Do you think he should be higher in Dynasty or lower in redraft?
Lower in redraft.
Yeah. I think that Nico is the guy that stays because I think Diggs is in a new system and Tank Dell might be injury prone. I don't think that he is, but he's so small, So I kind of like Nico even for this season. I think he's being a little underdrafted, but I completely agree with you, Fitz. Like if you are knocking him in 1, it has to be for redraft. It can't be for Dynasty because this dude could be an alpha for this team for a long time, and he's going to be linked with CJ Stroud for a while too, which right now looks like a really good spot to be in.
Well, and I think people are probably, there's like a degree of recency bias in terms of like Diggs finished last season really poorly and Tank Dell wasn't even on the field at the end of last season. And we saw Nico paired with this ascendant young superstar quarterback. And so it's just very easy to remember that because it's the last thing we saw out of those two. But that's to your point, more of a redraft thought. Let's go to round 4 where we finally see Boggs take a tight end.
Yeah, I'm not really a big reach for a tight end type of guy, especially with the class that we have. I think there are a lot of good tight ends, but Brock Bowers falls here. And I already see the smirk on Fitz's face. That is my main guy here. I also took 2 wide receivers, Higgins and Metcalf, and I took James Cook in one of my drafts as well. But in my favorite draft that I did, which was the one based off my rankings, of course, Bowers was my guy. So Bowers is a guy that I want. I think this is probably where you have to take him, which is going to be too rich for a lot of people. And I understand that because he's a rookie. He's a tight end. And the last time we saw a rookie tight end, it was Kyle Pitts, and he was amazing the first year and has not produced again. I get the trepidation, but I'm telling you, this is a guy that I'm willing to reach for, and I have him on 3 of my 4 dynasty teams that I've already drafted. So I am all in on the Brock Bowers train.
Fitz, is this range an appropriate spot to take a tight end in a 1 QB format? Not tight end premium or anything like that. Depending on who it is you prefer between a Bowers or if you're going back to well on Pitts or Dalton Kincaid or whoever, is this the right range for one of these young tight ends that you can believe in for a long time?
I think so, even in non-tight end premium. Tight end premium, obviously, like, these guys are going to go higher. But I think this is the right spot, considering that Bowers can be, I mean, like, Bogman and I are grabbing our tubs of popcorn, and we are ready for the Brock Bowers show. Like, I think it's going to be pretty spectacular, and I think he's going to have more of an immediate impact than people think. Like, people hate this landing spot. I was just looking at the Dynasty ECRs, and like, Bowers is almost 20 picks behind Trey McBride, and he's also behind Mark Andrews, who's pushing 30. So like, I don't get it. Like, Bowers is going to be
I
so
honestly
good.
think
This
it's the
dude is
overcorrection from Mark Andrews, Fitzy. I think that, or Mark Andrews from Kyle Pitts being good one year and then fading. And tight end is a tough position to transition to, but we just saw Sam
I
Laporta
know.
as a rookie. So I'm with you, Fitzy. I don't get it.
Right. Right. We're coming off a season where a rookie finished tight end 1. And by the way, Pitt's at 1,000 yards as a rookie.
Yeah.
So we should not be
It's
fading
interesting.
rookie tight ends, especially one.
I don't know if it's more the Pitts thing or more the landing spot. There's probably a
It's
degree
Maye.
of both. I think the landing spot is way overblown. Like in Dynasty, especially with tight end, where year one is not what you expect to be their best year anyway. Like I will bet on the talent. They drafted him in the top half of the first round for a reason. Like to me, it's purely a talent play, which I'm fully on board with. With a guy at his level of prospect.
Yeah, and people are sort of like I don't know, giving us the impression that neither Aiden O'Connell nor Gardner Minshew can throw a spiral. Both guys facilitated 100 plus catch wide receivers last year. So, I'm not worried about Bowers not being able to produce because of the quarterback situation.
Let's go to round 5. There's another tight end here who I'll just say it's Dalton Kincaid. And I want to get your opinion, Boggs, because I think Kincaid is very close to Bowers in my mind when considering everything, because he has the better landing spot. And when obviously he's been in the league for a year and they don't have a ton of receiving talent around him. So I really like Kincaid, and I think I might like him better if you can get him around maybe 2 rounds after Bowers. And I'm curious what you think about that.
So you would rather have like Kincaid and Metcalf than Bowers and Addison, something like that?
Yes.
That's fair. I'm super high on Jordan Addison, who's my guy in the 5th round here. So that would be, I would rather have Bowers and Addison. That is for someone that, drafts for this year. I am drafting a little more projection early, right? So I am doing that for sure. You got to take your upside though. But I think that's fair. I mean, Kincaid is in a really good spot right now. I have him just in a different section than those top 4 guys. I have him 5th with, Pitts and a couple other guys.
It's a little for me before you get to the rest of this round of just like, I keep looking at the expert consensus rankings, and we've done tiers shows like on the main feed and talking Dynasty, and all the tiers that I see, it's usually 4. And in some order, it's Sam Laporta usually 1. And then in some order, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, and Trey McBride. And I just think Kincaid belongs in that tier, like maybe at the bottom of the tier. But if I can get him going after those guys in redraft, so maybe that is sort of bleeding into this Dynasty discussion a bit, where the path seems so clear to a huge second-year breakout. So I just really like him. If I can get him, I like Bowers better, but if I can wait and take Kincaid and get whoever I consider to be the elite receiver in round 4 instead, I just like that path.
I was probably last year, I was slightly higher on, I'm slightly higher on Bowers now than I was on Kincaid last year. Kincaid, I thought he was going to be the guy that did the things that Laporta did last year, right? Yeah. The opportunity is right there in our face. When you see Laporta, it's like, well, you got Amon-Ra, you got Jameson on breakout, they have Gibbs, they sign Montgomery. How is he going to put it together? He wound up being as good as all those guys. So he was awesome. Kincaid didn't. He had Knox to contend with. I think that's also a big part of the contention with Brock Bowers, right? Is that he goes in with Michael Mayer already there, and we saw what happened with Kincaid with Knox. There was a little, Knox was hurt, and then he came back, and it kind of cooled Kincaid's hot streak. So I think there's a little bit of that in there as well. For Kincaid, but like you said, when we talk about opportunity, it is on the table right now. Stephon Diggs is gone. You have a rookie Keon Coleman that looks like your number 1 wide receiver. You could be the number 1 target in this offense. So there's definitely opportunity there for Kincaid.
Yeah, for sure. Fitz, very quickly, what do you think about getting Kincaid a round or 2 later than Brock Bowers?
Love it. I'm with you guys. Things are set up for him. Finished really nicely last year after Steph Diggs had sort of checked out, late in the regular season and in the playoffs. He does have a great opportunity here. Would not surprise me. I think I've got him ranked tight end 3 in redraft. So I'm pretty bullish on him for this year. And
I'll just say about the tight end position, Worm, you won't see me draft another one till round 11.
Yeah,
so I am Ricky totally Bobby with this. I'm getting a high-end tight end, or I am waiting. I'm not taking anyone in that middle.
If you get past tight end 6 or 7, probably 6 for me personally in Dynasty, maybe even like 5, because I just am not the type of guy who's going to take Kelce in a startup. So that outside of those like 5 young guys that I really believe in, yeah, I'm not. not bothering with it for quite a while. Looking at the rest of round 5, you already mentioned Jordan Addison as somebody that you really like, your favorite pick of the ones you made in this round. You also got Joe Burrow and Xavier Worthy. So you've got a rookie, you've got a quarterback. What was your thought process for those?
Yeah, a little bit. I wanted to see a high quarterback draft. That's why I went with Joe Burrow in the 5th. And I think my options at that point were not the greatest. So I kind of defaulted to the quarterback. Yeah. So here were my choices. It was Burrow, Kelsey, Diggs, Pickens. And we know that and this is putting the restrictions on myself of guys that I can pick from. But I don't like the rest of those guys. You got 2 old guys in Pickens who I'm just not sold on 100%. So really, it's the attitude in the offense with Arthur Smith, not his talent. His talent is great. But for out of that group, give me a quarterback. Give me a gunslinger. I know he's injury prone. I think that's why he has fallen here a little bit. But I think with a cleaner offensive line, they keep adding weapons. He's still going to be this vertical passer. So I'm still in on Burrow.
I want to get your opinion both on Burrow, Fitz, but also just on kind of breaking the seal on quarterback in a 1 quarterback format. Are you trying to take somebody in tier 1? Are you trying to take somebody in this round, like 5 to 7 range? Are you going to wait? What is your approach? Ignoring who the quarterback is, but just in terms of addressing the position in a 1 QB startup.
I like to wait because quarterbacks are so readily available in 1 QB dynasty. And I want to load up my shopping cart with running backs and wide receivers and tight ends first before I get to that. I'm perfectly fine taking the 14th, 15th, 16th quarterback off the board as my QB1.
Let's sort of in asking you a follow-up about Joe Burrow, I want to loop in round 6 because you take another quarterback here in one of your builds, Bogman, and that's Anthony Richardson. You have him as QB7 versus QB6 for Joe Burrow, or is that ECR that you have written down?
That's ADP.
That's ADP. Okay. So I'm not sure what order you have them. For me, Richardson, like I would take ahead of Joe Burrow, really like without hesitation. So if you can get him a whole round later, I love that. Fitz, before I go to Bogman about the rest of this round, what do you think about Burrow versus Richardson? Kind of that upside. Obviously, you know what he can do with the legs. They both have had some degree of injury question marks in the NFL. What do you think about taking those guys where they went?
Got Richardson ranked a little higher than Burrow just because younger and that rushing ability. And I think there's passing upside. I mean, when Bogman and I had Matt Waldman on the show when Richardson was coming out, Waldman made the point that even though that Richardson was basically just experienced, not raw, but experienced. And Waldman had talked to people who had done film work with Richardson and saying like, this guy is actually really smart about like manipulating defenders with his eyes and doing a lot of the little things that NFL quarterbacks need to do to be successful. Just hasn't had a ton of playing experience. So I think that's going to come. And meanwhile, we're going to enjoy that rushing goodness and it's going to be glorious. The other thing with Burrow, like he's had a lot of injuries now, a lot of different things, calf, knee, wrist. So I don't know. I'm not ready to call him injury prone, but things are starting to add up. And, if he misses any time this year, I think we might have to label him injury prone.
But what if Richardson misses a month?
Yeah. I mean, his style, of course, invites additional punishment, but he is a big dude. It seemed like they almost shut him down out of an abundance of caution last year and pulled the plug on his season.
Minshew was okay
too.
That could have been a part of it.
I see it.
I'm not too worried about Richardson
I see it as with Richardson, you're accepting to this point in their careers a similar level of risk in terms of the injury stuff while getting more of the upside. And obviously Joe Burrow in real life is an elite football or quarterback when he's healthy. But in fantasy, it's different when you can run. Like it just is.
Yeah.
And like the upside you get with, especially in a 1 QB format, in 2 QB, I might be a little more inclined to take the quarterback that I believe has a high floor. In 1 QB, the only way you can differentiate yourself with the position is by being elite, having one of those guys that can do it all and give you those 25 point per game type of seasons. So if you think, and I'm just throwing these numbers out arbitrarily, but if you think Joe Burrow is like an 18 point per game guy, but he's going to give you at least that, even if you see him as ignoring the injury, a high floor guy, and Richardson might be like terrible, but he might be a 24 point per game guy in a 1 QB format, I'm taking the upside swing on a guy like Richardson 10 times out of 10. even setting aside the fact that they both have had injury problems to date in their careers.
That's fair. Like, the rushing upside is huge. I just don't trust 4 games at all.
That's fair.
Burrow is a guy that can win an MVP if he stays healthy. I know that for a fact. So I just can't gamble on Richardson yet. So I won't.
Burrow is one of those guys who I need a decent discount if I'm going to be targeting him in Dynasty right now, but he is the type of player that could prove me very, very wrong for having that stance. He absolutely has it in him. Yeah. The rest around 6 here: Bogman, Najee Harris, Amari Cooper, Jonathan Brooks, Terry McLaurin. What'd you think about with these guys?
I mean, you guys know my pick here is going to be Najee, and I know Fitz doesn't like it, but let's think about a couple things here, right? Najee is still very young, and if he gets out of Pittsburgh, they didn't pick up his option. If he goes away from Pittsburgh, he's probably going to be signed to a spot where they need a running back. Dallas, I almost said Oakland, Vegas. There are going to be plenty of teams next year looking for a high volume back. He could go to the Giants and be their main back. So he's either going to flourish under Arthur Smith, I think, or he's going to go and pick up a job somewhere else and be their main back next year. So I think wherever Najee lands, his future still is a heavy type of usage running back wherever he goes. And if he sticks with Arthur Smith for a while, we could have some really big seasons from him if everything works with this offensive line and the Steelers figure out the quarterback spot here. So, I took wide receivers here in round 6 as well. It was McLaurin and Cooper, but I went young with the running back in Brooks. I went with Richardson, obviously around later, and then Najee Harris for this. This is one where I also took 5 different players because of my different builds. But Najee is my favorite guy here.
By now, most of you have probably heard of Reality Sports Online, the powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? It's time to go see what all the buzz in the Dynasty community is about. Free agency, multi-year contracts, a rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, contract extensions, first-round rookie options, automated contract and salary cap functionality, and much, much more. I think it sounds complicated. It's not. The best thing about Reality Sports Online Fantasy Front Office is that it doesn't take any more time than a standard league. It just requires more strategy. Think you're among the fantasy elite? Well, this is the platform to test your mettle. Still not sure? You can test out your general manager skills for free in a mock free agency auction. If you like what you see, use promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. That's promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. All right, guys, we're through sort of the early round targets, rounds 1 through 6. Let's move to the mid round here, starting at round 7, of course. Who do you want to highlight here, Bogman?
Yeah, I took Tony Pollard in round 7. I took a bunch of running backs, 4 out of 5 running backs. So I think round 7, just the way that ADP is going right now, is a pretty good RB round for most people. I had Najee slip to me here in one as well. So, but Pollard, I think, is being completely overlooked. And I just think that what we saw out of Joe Mixon in Cincinnati, we could potentially see from Tony Pollard in Tennessee. I do think Joe Mixon is a better running back, over his career than Tony Pollard will be. But I do think the usage could be similar. I know people are worried about Tyjae Spears. I'm just really not. So I'm just not a Spears guy. I think Pollard is pretty good. I think he showed after his injury last year, he was much improved. So I think people are down on him because he didn't perform the way we thought he was with Zeke gone in Dallas last year. And you're getting a discount on him. So that's why I wanted to highlight him here. I think he is a very, very good value falling here.
Fitz, what do you think about these running backs from Andre Stevenson, Tony Pollard, Trey Benson, that Bogman, dipped into the well on each of those guys in this round? We already, he mentioned Najee Harris for last round as well. But of those running backs, is there one that stands out to you? For me personally, I think I'd prefer Trey Benson.
Yeah, I think I'd probably err on the side of youth here with Trey Benson. I mean, I like that the Patriots made this big financial commitment to Ramondre. The only thing is their outlook is so bleak for 2024 with maybe one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL and not much of an offense. I don't see Ramondre scoring more than, 6 or 7 TDs tops this year. Pollard is really interesting. I do like Tyjae Spears a lot. Long-term outlook for Tyjae is maybe a little mixed with his knee condition, but And I really do want to give Pollard a mulligan on last season because clearly he was not fully healthy for a lot of it. And I think he said it was the game against Carolina, which I want to say was like week 11 or week 12, where he was finally feeling like his
It
old
was
self.
11.
And
It was
sure,
week 11. Yeah.
it was 11. Yeah. And sure enough, his numbers from that point on looked better than they had for most of the season. But I have no idea. I can't really envision how Tennessee is going to deploy their backs because it seems like they're kind of interchangeable. Like they could both be early down guys or passing down guys. So I don't know how Brian Callahan is going to utilize these guys.
Let's go to round 8, the round of rookies for you, Bogman. Who stands out here?
Yeah, I love round 8's probably my favorite round, which we'll get to. Round 11 I despised. So, but Keon Coleman, Ladd McConkey, Calvin Ridley, and Jaden Daniels. Let me ask you guys both this. Jaden Daniels in round 8 or Richardson in round 6? Obviously, you liked Richardson ahead of Burrow, but if you can take a 2-round discount, get a wide receiver, a running back in round 6, and take Daniels in round 8, is that something you guys would prefer?
For me, yes. I want to hear what you say, Fitz.
I would also take the discount.
Yeah.
Why I love round 8.
I like
Well,
Richardson.
because there's a degree of
Yeah.
risk with Jaden Daniels, but there's also clearly a degree of risk with Anthony Richardson too, right?
Sure.
It's not, and if you're going to give me a 2-round better player at a different position to take that risk, both guys have immense upside. I'm happy to do that.
And Daniels comes in as the more proven passer too of the
Very
two.
much so, and
He should be. He was in college a lot longer.
he was, but the system too in Washington, it's Cliff Kingsbury, which provided us Kyler Murray's great fantasy years for a long time as well. So yeah, I really like Jaden Daniels, but Keon Coleman. I mean, come on. Fitz and I have done. We're gonna look real dumb if Keon Coleman is not good this year, Fitzy. We're not gonna be enjoying some of the YouTube comments, of course, if he's not good. But we're both buyers. We're both believers, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is. So Keon Coleman is my favorite pick here. I like Ladd too. These are both 2 rookie wide receivers that are going to be in an opportunity to be the number 1 receiver. We said about Kincaid, it's the same for Coleman. Those guys have the opportunity to lead this team in targets. Ladd McConkey, I know the Chargers are going to move more towards a rushing offense, but he could be their number 1 wide receiver from the jump here. It would not be shocking. And like I said, I believe last week, that defense is not changing its colors in one season wholly and completely. They're still going to have to play catch up in a lot of games, the Chargers. So Justin Herbert could be throwing more than people think this season. So I love both those picks, and I love this round.
Fitz, you have talked plenty about Keon Coleman this whole offseason. Just quick thoughts on this as a value for him, not setting aside your player evaluation.
Like him a lot, but it's funny. I had him and Ladd McConkey side by side, like in my rookie rankings. And there were a couple, I think 3 different rookie drafts I had where it came down to having both of those guys on the board as like my top guys available. 2 of them I took Coleman, 1 I took Ladd. I did not want to go totally all in on Keon.
Diversify those bonds.
Man, I mean, his contested catch abilities are so special. I feel like that alone is going to make Keon Coleman at least a good NFL receiver if he can hone his route running ability. And I don't think he's ever going to be an elite separator, but if he can just be a good enough separator, I think he's going to be a fantastic NFL player.
Bogman, take us to round 9.
Round 9, I hated. Not a fan of round 9. Brian Robinson, Dak Prescott, Jalen Warren, Jameson Williams. I have Brian Robinson as my guy here. I probably enjoy the Jameson Williams pick more. Because I just think there's so much upside. I still believe in this guy. I definitely in my rankings did the overcorrection because I was so wrong on him last year. I then brought him up to a normal range. But I just really like Brian Robinson. And we did see Connor produce a couple big years with Kingsbury as well. So while I know for this year, we're kind of confused because like Eckler is coming in, his run game coordinator in Washington is Anthony Lynn, who made him very successful with the Chargers. So there's kind of this, what is going to happen with Brian Robinson? But I think Brian Robinson is a good enough back to be a 3-down back still. And I think Eckler knows he has to transition in his career to a third down role if he wants to keep making that NFL money. I think he's a smart guy. He's on a lot of fantasy podcasts and stuff. Like, he knows these things about running back. So I think he's going to change his role in Washington, and Brian Robinson's still going to be the lead back. I think we're getting a bit of a discount on him.
Fitz, if you want to weigh in on Brian Robinson, you can. I don't want to stop you, but I am also really curious to get your opinion on Jameson Williams in Dynasty right now, given what he was when he came out as a prospect and what he's been to date, or rather not been.
Yeah. So on Robinson, Boggs mentioned that Connor had some good seasons with Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona, but think back to Kyler Murray's rookie year in 2019. And this is pertinent because Cliff Kingsbury was the play caller for Kyler Murray. Now he's going to be the play caller for another ultra mobile rookie QB in Jane Daniels. 2019 was the year that the Cardinals made the midseason trade to acquire Kenyon Drake. And in 8 games with the Cardinals, Kenyon Drake scored 8 touchdowns, averaged 80 rushing yards a game, and averaged 5.2 yards per carry as the Cardinals' primary early down back. Like, Brian Robinson could do that same sort of thing. And, I've maybe come around on Robinson a little. I don't know if he's a special talent, but he's maybe a little, at first I thought he was just sort of meh. Now I think he's a little better than that. And obviously the dude's tough. I mean, to get shot in the leg and, barely miss any practice time, let alone any games before the start. Was that 2021 or 2022? 2022, sorry. Anyway, Jameson Williams, yeah, like, people have lost interest in him, but obviously the Lions were super cautious with him in year one. I mean, just barely played, had 6 targets, 1 catch or whatever. And last year, dealt with some injuries too. I think people are kind of sleeping on him. He's got no competition among the outside receivers there. Yes, he's got target competition with Amon-Ra and Sam Laporta, of course. But outside, I mean, it's Khalif Raymond and Donovan Peoples-Jones and boy,
there might be too many mouths to feed in Detroit. That's my only trepidation on Jameson, but he's super talented.
The thing is, though, he is a dude who could average 18 yards a catch and 10 yards per target and, get it done on not a lot of overall targets.
And he's got a smart play caller. I mean, Ben Johnson keeps sticking around. He seems like somebody who can use Jameson Williams, especially as a unique style of receiver in that offense.
Yeah.
Let's go to round 10. Just 3 players here, Bogman.
Yeah, this is a QB round for me. 2 of them were McCarthy. 2 of them were Travis Etienne, and the last one was Cortland Sutton.
Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, who did I say?
Etienne.
Etienne. Yeah, Jesus. Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, I'm ready for vacation, guys. Cortland Sutton was my last pick, who I don't really like. It's just my mid pick, and that was the guy I took. But yeah, McCarthy is my favorite pick in this round because I think McCarthy is such a good QB2. He has so much unbelievable upside. I don't know that I want him as a QB1. So when I got to this section and I was picking a QB1, that's Trevor Lawrence. I've seen Trevor Lawrence. I know he's pretty good. I know there's meat on the bone for him to grow, right? So that's a much safer pick if you're taking your starting QB. If you're getting a backup, McCarthy is just a pick I love because I think that he can be a guy that leads the league in passing yards. Such a good offense built around him. Obviously, he's very raw, right? But this offense has Addison, it has Jefferson, it's going to get Hawkinson back. There's so many good pieces built in that I think he is a good investment for the future, even in a 1 QB league, because this is a guy that could have enormous numbers, and you can either have him as your starting quarterback and trade someone else, or you could trade him and get other pieces you need eventually. So I just really, really like investing in McCarthy, but if I'm going for a starter, I think I have to lean Lawrence in that situation.
I like investing in McCarthy, but yeah, I love Trevor Lawrence, getting him in round 10, even in a 1 QB. I just think the upside is still immense. I know he hasn't been, like I said on a previous show, the prince who was promised quite yet, but holy cow, the talent is there. And he was really close on a lot more touchdowns last year. There's a montage on Twitter of all the near misses that this offense had. So taking that swing when he's falling to round 10, I like that quite a bit. in terms of the value there. What do you think fits between those two QBs? Not head to head, but just in terms of values for each of them.
Yeah, I like both. I mean, I've been talked into JJ McCarthy by Thor, Bogman, Debro. I've been getting triple teamed on JJ, so I like him. But yeah, I think I'd rather have Trevor Lawrence.
It's fair.
Lawrence there is a big season coming for Lawrence eventually.
Yeah, I fully agree. Let's go to round 11 here. 5 different names from you, Bogman.
Yeah, this is a round I hated. It's Lloyd, Musgrave, Cole Kmet, Devin Singletary was my last one, and Chase Brown. I think in the one that I was building, I kind of got stuck. I had to take a running back. Yeah, I see Singletary is a very high floor, so that's why I took him in one spot. But Chase Brown is the guy I want out of this group because I think Chase Brown can immediately be a starter. I don't want to invest in tight ends here. The two teams that I picked him for were the teams that I just didn't have a tight end for and I needed to get one eventually. But Chase Brown is my favorite pick by a wide margin in this build. And I mean, Marshawn Lloyd is good too, but Chase Brown only has Zach Moss in front of him. Lloyd has got Josh Jacobs in front of him now. So I don't like this round at all, but Chase Brown is my pick if I had to choose one here.
Fitz, I know Bogman doesn't have to convince you on Chase Brown.
Yeah, pulling him out of the 11th round in a 1 QB startup, I would be elated to get him there. A guy who could potentially, if the Bengals decide he is clearly a better option than Zach Moss, just throw him into that Joe Mixon role because we know he can handle it. I've mentioned it a zillion times that he averaged 27 carries a game in his final season at Illinois. Like he could be a heavy duty back if they chose to give him that assignment.
Let's go to round 12 here. Just 4 names here, Bogman. Who stood out to you?
Yeah, Wicks, Roshan, Dotson, and Baker. We'll get to Baker in a second because you don't have to take him here. But Wicks was my guy out of this group. I've been taking a lot of running backs, but Wicks still has a ton of upside in a good offense. Plus, I got to get Fitz on my side on occasion here. So let's throw Wicks as my favorite player in this group.
I was going to say, it feels like Bogman is just pandering to me now with Chase Brown and Dontayvion Wicks.
Well, I got to get you back on my side. I knew you're going to hate a couple of my picks earlier. So,
I'm really intrigued by Jahan Dotson in Dynasty right now. What we saw last year was so bad that it's so easy to write him off. He did some nice things in year 1. He was a first-round pick, a talented player. They are upgrading at quarterback. We'll see what happens, in terms of how much of an upgrade Cliff Kingsbury is. But there's a path here to this being pretty undervalued, and a really nice grab by you to get Dotson in round 12. There's also a path to it not panning out, but it's not like you're taking him in round 6, right? I mean, this is a really reasonable range to take a risk and a guy that I think could be pretty high upside.
You're reaching last year. That might've been where you got him. And so you hate his guts now. Right. So I understand. And that's why, I think Fitz, you were talking about in the last show, someone wanting Luke McCaffrey, or maybe that was on the double coverage in your league. And you were kind of surprised by that. I think it's because they don't believe in Dotson. Right. And Dotson is in a precarious position because this offense, he could have tons of opportunities. Right. This is Cliff Kingsbury, spread it out, throw the ball. He could have a ton of opportunities this year to win a job and stay in this offense as a high-end receiver for a long time. But this isn't the group that drafted him. They're not loyal to him. I would say this happens a lot when you see a new coaching staff come in, is that this guy, he is very much, his value is dependent on what he does in camp and this season, because he could easily be a big cog in this offense for a long time, or he could be off this team next year. And I wouldn't be surprised by either result, which is why he falls to this spot.
Fitz, what do you think of Dotson in round 12?
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. I guess we do have to throw up the caution flag on Dotson after he did very little last year. And I think part of that is just it seemed like Sam Howell was much more comfortable throwing in the middle of the field than to the boundaries. But man, like even in his rookie year, there were flashes. There was touchdown scoring, but he did miss some time there. We didn't really get a full sample size. So jury kind of still out on Dotson. I like him. He's got first round draft capital behind him. So I'm inclined to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I know in round 12, not a bad risk to take.
Let's go to round 13. Bogman, take us through what you did.
Yeah, Drake Maye would be my pick here. Another, just quarterbacks falling a little bit in a 1 QB league, just like JJ McCarthy, just an investment. He's your backup quarterback. In no situation can you take him as a starter. But the rest of the guys here, Luke Musgrave, Isaiah Likely. So this is, the tight ends are falling. I'm getting a couple of them. Jermaine Burton and Tyler Algier. Jermaine Burton, one of my favorite picks. I'll talk about him more in the next round. But yeah, it's really, this round is not my favorite either. Because I hate taking tight ends at any point. You have to have him, though, especially if you're drafting a deep roster. You got to get some backups. I love a risk on Musgrave. I like a risk on Likely because I don't know, how long is the road for Mark Andrews in the NFL, maybe a season, maybe 2 seasons of that upper tier production, right? And then he's going to start slipping. So, and Likely is kind of a tweener too, who could see an expanded role. So, but out of this group, my favorite pick is easily Drake Maye.
Yeah, I'm with you on Maye. I'm also with you on Likely. I've said it 100 times on these shows, but like Mark Andrews, if he is banged up, like Isaiah Likely is a top 7 or 8 tight end every week that Mark Andrews is not playing. And he might not be in Baltimore forever. That could apply to both Mark Andrews or Isaiah Likely, and they could go somewhere else. And I think we saw last year when Andrews was out that the talent is very legitimate. He is a quality NFL receiving tight end who can make these big, fun splash plays. So like round 13, it's not like you're taking him in round 20, but I mean, I think it's totally reasonable to take an upside swing there. Fitz, who stands out to you of this group that you really like?
I'll back up Boggs on Drake Maye, who pre-draft I had ranked as my quarterback 2 behind only Caleb. It's just that Drake Maye drew the short straw as far as landing spots among the rookie quarterbacks. And boy, that is a very short straw. But man, like he has got, I think what maybe some people don't appreciate is how much actual rushing upside Drake Maye has. Like he is going to run and very aggressively. Like I think he could eventually be a 600 or 700 yard rusher, maybe not quite on par with Jaden Daniels as far as what he could give you in terms of rushing output, but maybe not that far behind either. And just like the bloodlines, I mean, he comes from a really athletic family. Like he can make every throw in the book. Like he needs polish for sure. And it's going to take a while. And, he gets kind of a bleak assignment his first couple of years of trying to bring the Patriots back from the dead. But this dude is uber talented and I'm excited about him long-term. And if you can get him and just park him on the bench as your QB2 or QB3 in a 1 QB dynasty league, so much the better. Cause I think eventually he'll pay
I think
off.
only McCarthy is younger than him. He's one of the youngest quarterbacks in the NFL too, coming out. So a lot of room for growth for Drake Maye.
Round 14, also very much a rookie round, including a couple of names you've already mentioned so far, Bogman.
Yeah, look, we got to take upside when you're picking late. You're gambling way more, especially in a dynasty. So I love Javon Baker was a guy I took the most. I think I took him in 3 or 4 of my drafts. It was he's definitely my favorite player to take. Jermaine Burton, I think, falls into that as well. If T. Higgins is going to leave Cincinnati, you pair him up with Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow in that offense. I think there's so much upside for both of these guys. And I just I know they took Polk ahead of Baker. I get it. Polk is probably more of a complete wide receiver and that perimeter guy, but there's no one on the Patriots with speed outside of Baker and Antonio Gibson. Those are the 2 guys. And I am just super excited to see Baker in this offense. I think he's going to move into at least a wide receiver 2 role just at the jump. I think he's uber talented. So I love picking in this round. This is not very much like rounds 13 and 11 that I hated. Round 14 is one of my favorites because I could take one of these young wide receivers. I also took Ben Sinnott here and Ray Davis. So we're taking all rookies and all upside in this round.
Fitz, do you have a preference between Baker and Burton?
I don't. 2 high upside guys who could work out or not. And it's interesting because they're both, maybe sort of mercurial personalities too. I know Baker can be very demonstrative on the field. Burton was maybe, according to some people, like not on some teams' draft boards. But boy, a lot of talent for both. Good time in a rookie or in a startup draft to take a swing on like a non-first round rookie and guys with big upsides. And like, I think, those guys are the perfect 14th round picks in a 1 QB startup.
Prepare for your upcoming fantasy football draft with Fantasy Pros Mock Draft Simulator. Quickly perform realistic mock drafts tailored to your league's settings in minutes. You can utilize advanced tools like the Pick Predictor to anticipate player availability and Draft Intel to analyze your league's draft tendencies. Get comprehensive analysis on every mock with the Draft Analyzer to refine your strategy. Dominate your draft today with the Mock Draft Simulator at fantasypros.com/mock or on the Fantasy Football Draft Wizard app. All right, we'll go quickly through kind of the true late round targets here. This will be rounds 15 through 20. So Bogman, start us off in round 15.
Yeah, around 15. And, a lot of these late rounds, you're looking for running backs because, if you're smart, you're investing in a lot of wide receivers. So a lot of these are going to be like dart throw running backs, some dart throw wide receivers, and then some quarterbacks that are still pretty valuable falling down here. So round 15, it was our boy Vidal. I also took Sanat in this round. Luke McCaffrey, Will Levis, a couple guys. Will Levis we'll talk about in a little bit when we talked about McCaffrey a little bit. But Vidal, one of our favorite names this offseason, is just the opportunity is there for him to potentially make an impact. It's Gus Edwards. It's J.K. Dobbins coming off a major injury that are in front of him in a run-heavy offense. It looks like a really good fit for fantasy. So it's a risk I'm willing to take every single time.
Fitz, where do you think Vidal will be going in startup drafts a year from now? And obviously there's a degree of projection here because he is a late round rookie. He does have other talented veterans, if not guys who are, going to block him if he's really earning it. And obviously there's health question marks with Dobbins. But there's a chance where he solidifies himself as the lead back for the Chargers this season in a run heavy offense. There's also a chance where they draft another running back on day 2 or something next year in what is a really strong running back class, and all of a sudden his value is nuked. So it's a lot of moving parts is my point. Where do you think will RB69 is what he is now? Will that be seen as too high or too low a year from now?
I think it'll be seen as too low. I mean, he could crush it and win the lead role in that offense and be going in the 4th round of 1 QB startups next year. Or he could be going undrafted because as a 6th rounder, there's not even a guarantee he makes the roster. If, I like him a lot and I think he's terrific and I think he's going to make the roster, but 6th round running backs, the hit rates are not great. Yeah. So I don't want to get out over my skis and predicting greatness for Kimani Vidal. Just have to acknowledge the risk. But I think in round 15, that risk is warranted.
It's hard for me not to remember Dameon Pierce, who I like better as a prospect than Vidal when he came out, and he went 2 rounds higher and was sort of handed this opportunity to be the lead back because there was no other options, and just how quickly that has kind of fallen apart. So that's just kind of hard to not think about with Vidal. Also, there has been some talk.
Hater.
I was gonna say there has been some talk from Daniel Jeremiah about J.K. Dobbins maybe looking pretty healthy with the Chargers, at least healthier than some people expected. So I really like Vidal here. That's not to hate on this pick too much, Bogman. I'm just sort of playing devil's advocate with it a bit because I do really like him in round 15 for sure. Let's go to round 16.
Yeah, round 16, it was Jaleel McLaughlin, Tyrone Tracy, and Chigakonko, and I took Jaleel 3 times. I mean, this I would much rather have Jaleel, I think, than Vidal, and I like Vidal, but I think Jaleel showed out last season. He's one of the first guys I talked about in the offseason when we kicked this show up that I thought guys that are underrated, because you look at his numbers at the end of the season, he was better than Javonte. He was way more efficient, and that's what we're hearing right now is that he looked great in camp. I didn't see a lot from Javonte. I still believe in Javonte. I don't think he's pushing Javonte off the roster or anything like we have heard, in kind of hyperbole. But I do think that he has a decent role here and has a chance to be the lead back for Denver. Even though I'm a big Javonte fan, I think Jaleel really proved himself last year. So one of my favorite late picks for sure.
I know Debro would agree if he were on this episode. Fitz, what do you think?
Yeah, and he's got a foothold. It's a very confusing backfield with Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, Audric Estime. They gave a lot of money to Blake Watson as a UDFA. So I do expect some sort of committee rollout, but Jaleel looked good last year. He showed some juice. So, and I agree with taking him over Vidal. I mean, he's at least got a foothold in the offense.
I forget if you mentioned the other two names you picked, but just in case you didn't, Tyrone Tracy and Chigakonkwo were the other two that you had in this round, but Jaleel was your favorite. Let's go to round 17. 3 quarterbacks here taken by you in round 17.
Yeah, one of them was Matt Stafford, who isn't my favorite pick in a dynasty league, but that was a team that I took Richardson and I took McCarthy, and Matt Stafford is just plummeting because he's close to my age, so it's not great.
I mean, I think that's a great quarterback room. Like, I would love to have that in a 1 QB. I'd be really excited about that QB.
I think so too. So that's why, like I'll take Stafford now, and if he's the best producer out of all three of these guys for this year, then I'll roll him out, but I have a lot of potential there in that QB room. But the other guy is Will Levis, and I do think that Will Levis is a lot like we said with Jahan Dotson. I think we've said this about Levis before. He's in a precarious position, right? He has to make it work this year because this is not the coaching staff that wanted him. It's not the guys that brought him in. They're trying him. They also brought in Mason Rudolph. I don't like Mason Rudolph at all. I think Will Levis is so much more talented than Mason Rudolph that it's not close. And they put him in a position to succeed. They went and got Calvin Ridley. They went inside Tyler Boyd, Hopkins. There were a couple trade rumors in the offseason. He didn't go anywhere. They brought in Tony Pollard. I think they improved the O-line. I think that there are big improvements in Tennessee. This is going to be a vertical offense. It's what they're going to want to do. And I think it showcases Will Levis's arm talent as well. He's going super late in 1 QB leagues. I think he's a great draft and stash super late. Maybe you want to skip McCarthy because you like the running backs, or you want to grab a tight end or whatever, in the middle. This is the second guy that I would take, would be Will Levis. Grab and stash and just see what he does in this offense, because yes, he's precarious. He could be out of this job next year if he doesn't perform, but they have put a lot of talent around him and improved the O-line. I just really think that things could click for him this year.
Fitz, would you rather take a chance on Will Levis in round 17 or Justin Fields?
I think Justin Fields, just because we have seen him be something close to like a top 5, top 10 quarterback. He's just got to fix the sack avoidance problem. And, he's going to get another chance at some point, and maybe it doesn't work out and he flames out. But at this point, in a round 17, it's easy to move on from a round 17 pick, 1 QB startup if he gets another chance and flops.
Malik Washington, the non-quarterback taken in this round by Bogman. I like the player a lot. Let's go to round 18. Who you got here?
Tank Bigsby. I mean, 18, 19, and 20 were tough, especially when I was being more restrictive to work in those rounds. There wasn't a lot of talent at the end, according to ADP. But Bigsby, I just still think that there's a shot. I know it didn't work last year. I'll throw a dart. It's not nothing if you need to dump him. But I also had Tyrone Tracy in this round, Theo Johnson in one of my builds that I didn't have a tight end. St. Jones. I mean, it was bad this round. This is not my favorite round at all.
Yeah, we could speed through these. I do just want to quickly ask, though, Fitz, because we've mentioned his name a couple of times. Tyrone Tracy, what do you make of him in dynasty formats?
I'd rather have him than Bigsby, I think. Like, really interesting because he's a freaky athlete and he's a former wide receiver. I mean, in some ways, he's kind of like the new Antonio Gibson with his pass catching background and athleticism. And oh, by the way, he goes to a team that doesn't have a lot on the depth chart at running back in front of him. So he is a really intriguing late round dart throw.
We went 2 rounds too many on these because in both round 19 and round 20, we have kickers coming off the board for some reason.
Hold on now.
This is what happens when you leave Boggs to his own devices.
Listen,
let's combine rounds 19 and 20 together and walk us through your thought process.
The only reason I took the stupid kickers is because I was looking. I hated the talent here, and it was just to make the point that in a dynasty league, in most cases, I'm taking a kicker over a defense. That's all. I have no respect for a team defense at all. If I had my wishes, we'd have IDP in every single league. We don't do it. It's fine. I'm not going to cry about it right now. I'm not going to make it a big deal. I'm not going to freak out. But I'll take the kicker over the defense. Can fluctuate. Too many pieces change. if you have a good kicker, take a good stupid kicker.
But by the way, just in case people care, the kickers were Jake Elliott and Cameron Dicker. Just in case people want to know who you have ranked as K6 and K7.
I don't care about the kickers, but the actual players that I took here were Dylan Laube, Theo Johnson, Jelani Woods. Debro and I were talking about Jelani Woods the other day. We're big fans. And then it was like safe guys in the 20th round, and one real big dart throw was like, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Tyler Boyd, Dulcich, and then Deuce Vaughn. If I'm just throwing a dart on a running back at the very end, Deuce Vaughn is super undersized. He probably won't turn into anything, but there is opportunity in Dallas. There's just nobody there. It's Zeke and Rico Dowdle, who are both bigger backs and going to be lead backs before Deuce Vaughn is. But that little dude put a lot of work in at Kansas State and handled some heavy workloads. So it's different in the NFL. Donnell Pumphrey did it too at San Diego State and then came in and got crunched and out of the league real fast. So maybe that's the future for Deuce Vaughn, but I'll throw a dart on a kid that's super, super talented in the very last round.
Fitz, any of these names in these rounds stand out to you that you want to hit on?
Yeah, obviously the kickers. First, Bogman sends us a document that looks like he's giving us his tax forms, and then it includes these kickers. So I was a little dismayed. Keep kickers and team defenses out of Dynasty, although one of our Fantasy Pros Dynasty leagues does have kickers and defenses. So maybe I'm
rid of them and add IDP.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by Dylan Laube. Another guy who doesn't have a daunting depth chart to ascend, and has a pretty well-rounded skill set and tested really well at the combine. So he is an intriguing late round dart throw.
The first Dynasty startup I ever participated in, it was a salary cap draft, so it took like 4.5 hours, and it had both team defenses and kickers. And I was like, how much of my salary cap am I supposed to spend on the Ravens defense and special teams? And after year one, we got rid of both. We were like, no, that was a bad idea. We don't use them anymore. Last question before we get out of here, Bogman. Did you find anything about this process and the experience of putting together all these different teams to be illuminating in terms of your strategy in startup drafts? Maybe something that you kind of learned about how you want to approach things that you maybe didn't think about before doing this back to back to back to back to back?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think the ADP was wildly different than what I thought it was going to be. There were some guys that I thought were going way too high, some guys that I thought were going way too late. So there was a lot of that. And you see that at the end of these drafts that I did, because I have a lot of repeat players or guys I took in the separate rounds or whatever it was. So for me, I would say, getting close to the end, just take your shots, man. Just take, because the ADP is all different. And even up top, like, I'm just not a big overall list guy. I'll make them, but I think after you get past round 4, it's really dependent on what you have already built on your team. So my builds look very different from different spots, which is why I wanted to mix it up, because I'll tell you, I did start by just eyeballing a couple guys. I'm like, okay. And then I was like, well, this doesn't make sense. If I take this guy, there's no way I'm getting this guy in the second round. So that's why I wanted to do the bigger build and kind of look through it. But I with less restrictions, of course, I like those teams more than when I put the restrictions on myself. But yeah, I mean, just stay wide receiver heavy and take your shots more at running back, because the position rolls over. I think those are the things to stay important. And I think what Fitz said rings true. Get rid of kickers and defenses. Just play with the skill positions. We don't need to be wasting fab money on defenses and kickers and bye weeks and all that crap. So that's what I'll say about it. Or just make it so everybody can pick the same kicker and defense every single week. I also think that's okay.
I wouldn't be opposed to getting rid of them in redraft leagues, let alone Dynasty. So I'm fully with you there. Fitz, we'll get more of your strategy thoughts next week when we run through this same exercise. For you, again, next week, we'll do that from the Superflex perspective, so you'll hear a little bit different in terms of the ADP and stuff. We'll get out of there on that. Thanks to everybody for tuning in this week for Bogman and Fitz. And for all of you, please enjoy the 4th of July. Have a fun holiday. I'm Ryan Wormeli. We'll see you again next week.